Hello everyone, myself Deepak Gupta, and today in this second session of cost function of microeconomics, we will primarily focus on the calculation of average fixed cost. So I will use the full forms first and then we will only use the symbol. Then the average variable cost, the average total cost, commonly known as AC, average cost. So we can write average cost or average total cost, and also the marginal cost, and also try to understand the relationship between them, and we will discuss and understand these topics with the help of the data, not theoretically. So first, to understand the meaning of the word AFC, average fixed cost, let us create a data example where we will have two things, that is first the output, then the total fixed cost, because average fixed cost is equal to total fixed cost divided by the quantity. So this output is the quantity, this total fixed cost is the TFC, and therefore if we divide this total fixed cost by quantity, so we arrive at the figure of average fixed cost. So the most peculiar characteristic of total fixed cost is that whether the output is zero, and even if we keep on increasing the output, so for our purposes we will increase the output by one in each step. So even if the output is zero, the fixed cost will remain same, or I should say, even if the output is zero, there will be some cost. So at zero output, the cost which is still there is the fixed cost. That is the total fixed cost, and it will remain the same even though the output is increasing. That is the basic characteristic of the total fixed cost, which we discussed in our earlier session. So if we say that this figure is, say, a small figure of 12, I'm just taking the figures from the book so that if someone wants to revise them, then there is no confusion. So this average fixed cost in this case will be 12, it will be 12, बट दिस बेसिकली ये 12 ना होके इनफाइनाइट है, क्योंकि इसको पर यूनिट में एक्सप्रेस करना इम्पॉसिबल सा है, क्योंकि डिवाइडेड बाय ज़ीरो है। यहाँ पर 12 डिवाइड बाय 1 इट विल बी 12, 12 divided by 2 it will be 6, 12 divided by 3 will be 4, 12 divided by 4 will be 3, and 12 divided by 5 will be 2.4. So we can see that there is a remarkable decrease. So average fixed cost is inversely proportional to the quantity. As the quantity increases, the average fixed cost decreases, and the total fixed cost is not proportional to the quantity, that is, it remains constant. It remains constant. So if we draw a graph where we take the output, that is the quantity, on the x-axis, and we take the average fixed cost on the y-axis, then you will feel that because it cannot start from the zero because the figure is infinite, so it will start somewhere from this figure of, say, that as the output is zero, the average fixed cost is high, so it is starting from a figure of, say, 12 from here, and it will keep on decreasing. It will keep on decreasing. So the average fixed cost graph will keep on decreasing as the output increases. As the output increases. So now if I come to the average variable cost, then we can have two perceptions. So this average variable cost will be equal to total variable cost divided by the quantity. So to understand this, we like above can have the proper understanding through an example. And because it is dependent upon the total figure of variable cost and the quantity, so we will have similar charts. We will have the figure of output, we will have the figure of total variable cost, and we will have the figure of average variable cost, which will be total variable cost divided by the quantity. And as discussed in the last session, in continuation to that, if the output is zero, the total variable cost will be zero, and that is the primary characteristic of the variable cost, and hence average variable cost will also be zero. But as the output increases, there will be some variable cost, let's say for example 6, and therefore the average variable cost will be equal to 6. Now there is the perception that if the output increases by another 1 unit, then what can happen, that this total variable cost can either increase proportionately or it cannot increase proportionately. So that is why we stressed in the last session that if this increases proportionately, then the graph can be straight line, which we will have already discussed in the last session. So in this session, we are going by the economic perception, where we believe that as the output increases, that there may not be a constant increase in the average variable cost. That is, the total variable cost will increase with the output but not proportionately, and therefore we say that the total variable cost is 10, and hence this 10 divided by 2 becomes 5. Similarly, if I say that this is 3 and it becomes equal to 15, so what is happening here? 15 divided by 3 is equal to 5. If I get it to 4 and I say it is now 24, so it is now becoming 24 divided by 4, that is equal to 6. And what is happening, that if I now take it to 5 and it becomes 35, so it is showing that 35 divided by 5 is equal to 7. So basically, if I show it this way, that it was 0, it was 6, it was 12, it was 18, it was 24, it was 30. Then in this case, average cost in each time will be 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. So in that case, if I draw a graph, that is why I've taken it blue, where we have taken the output on the x-axis, that is the quantity, and average variable cost. So it will be a straight line and the graph will go like this. But if we go by the normal economic perception, so what is happening here, that if we take the output Q on the x-axis and average variable cost on the y-axis, then it started with, you can see that it started with 6, then there was a slight fall to 5, and then it started again increasing. So it started with 6, it went on to 5, then it reclaimed 6 and it went on to 7. So the average variable cost will first increase with the increase. I'm again repeating that the average variable cost will first decrease with the increase in the output, and then it will increase as the output increases, as it is happening here कि फर्स्ट से 5 आने पे ये 6 से गिरा और फिर यहाँ से बढ़ना शुरू हो गया. तो ये जो एवरेज वेरिएबल कॉस्ट का जो फंक्शन है, ये पिक्यूलियर है टू certain basic assumptions. So there is a diverse relationship between the movement of the average variable cost as per the total variable cost dependent upon कि जो टोटल वेरिएबल कॉस्ट है वो आउटपुट के प्रोपोर्शनेटली चेंज हो रही है या नॉन प्रोपोर्शनेटली चेंज हो रही है बट वन थिंग इज श्योर that as the output increases so we can say that the total variable cost is directly proportional to the quantity but average variable cost directly proportional to quantity है या नहीं है it is a question mark. Okay, so in relationship to this white figures, now if I move to the average cost, or the average total cost which will be equal to total cost divided by the quantity. So here we can show it this way that output we will have the figure of total fixed cost, we will have the figure of total variable cost, then we had the figure of average fixed cost, then we had the figure of average variable cost, then we can have the figure of total cost, and then we can have the figure of average cost which will be total cost divided by the quantity or average fixed cost plus average variable cost. So output can be 0, output can be 1, output can be 2, output can be 3, output can be 4, and output can be 5. The total fixed cost in each of the case was 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, and 12, and hence the average fixed cost in this case was infinite ignored. It was 12 here, it was 6 here, it was 4 here, it was 3 here, and it was 2.4 here. The total variable cost as discussed was 0 here, it was 6 here, it was 10, it was 15, it was 24, it was 35. Therefore, the average variable cost here was nil. It was 6 here, it was 5 here, it was 5 here, it was 6 here, it was 7 here. So the total cost which is equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost, that will be 12, that will be 18, that will be 22, that will be 27, that will be 36, and that will be 47. So if we now divide to average cost will here be infinite because 12 upon 0. So if you see here that they coincide. So this figure and this figure they coincide. Here you see here it is coming out to be 18, which is equal to 12 plus 6. It is coming out to be 11. इसको मुझे यहाँ से नहीं मैच करना चाहिए, इसको यहाँ से मैच, ठीक है. Similarly 6 plus 5 is equal to 11, or I can say 22 divided by 2, or 6 plus 5. It is coming out to be 9. 4 plus 5 or 27. So it is 4 plus 5 or 27 divided by 3. Now it is 3 plus 6, 9. So it is 3 plus 6 or 36 divided by 4. And here it is 9.4. That is 7 plus 2.4 or 47 divided by 12, sorry, divided by 5. So you will see here that the average cost has now started to fall, and once it has fallen to a minimum, it has started to increase. And the reason being that though average fixed cost is reducing, but the average variable cost is starting to increase. And once it started to increase, its impact on the average cost begins to take it to the upper side. So if we presume it this way, that the graph will now, कि यहाँ हम उसको अगर क्वांटिटी या आउटपुट लें और यहाँ एवरेज कॉस्ट लें, तो द ग्राफ जो पहले हाई था वो पहले लो पर आना शुरू हुआ और फिर वो वापस होना शुरू हो जाएगा. So we can see from here that if we merge all the graphs together, that the average where we had this quantity and here we had this cost. So when we had this average fixed cost, it was going like this. Okay? When we had that variable cost, it was going like this. And when we had that average cost, it was going like this, because it has to be the total of the two. It has to be the total of the two. And they were quite same on the line, because at a particular output of 0, the variable cost was not having an impact. So whatever was the fixed cost, that has to rate with that. So if the graph could have been on that earlier blue line, where if we had shown the output here and the cost here, then it could have been that the fixed cost could have remained like this straight, and could have gone like that. But just to avoid the confusion, I'm not interested कि हम उस blue फंडे को carry forward करें, and we should stick to what the economic principles presume in normal. Okay, so I think we have now understood the relationship. Now if we take the funda of marginal cost, marginal cost basically denotes the addition to the total cost if the total output increases by 1 unit. We can also say that marginal cost in is the change in total cost divided by the change in output. Or we can also say it this way, that marginal cost is equal to the total cost at n number of units minus total cost at one lesser unit. So if we reproduce that graph here which showed this total cost, it showed this total cost. If I reproduce that graph here again, where we had the output that is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we had this figure of total variable cost which was 0, 6, 10, 15, 24, 35. We have this figure of total fixed cost of 12 each. We had this figure of total cost of 12, 18, 22, 27, 36, and 47. So marginal cost in the first case is to be ignored, but this difference will be 6 because it will be total cost 1 minus total cost as 0. It will be 4 here because it will be TC2 minus TC1. It will be 5 here because it will be TC3 minus TC2. It will be 7 here which will be TC4 minus TC3, and it will be 7 here which will be TC5 minus TC4. Sure ji? Sorry, this is 11. So 47 and 36 is 11. So 6, 4, 5, and this is, sorry, I just calculated wrongly because this is coming out to be 9. So if you see that if I calculate the average variable cost, which was 0 here, which was 6 here, this was 5, but this incremental cost is 4. Now if I calculate this, it was 5 here, it was 6 here, and it was 7 here. So this marginal cost is not equal to average variable cost because marginal cost denotes the increase in the total cost. But if we take that blue data where the average or the very total variable cost was increasing in proportion to the output, then you will find that this average variable cost will be same, and in that case the marginal cost will be equal to the average variable cost. So that these two perception about variable cost will always affect the data and the planning of the business. But because that is not the assumption at the current scenario, that is why that is not been recorded on the board. So on this note, we now seem to understand the concept of average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and the marginal cost. And on this note, we close this session. Thank you very much.